This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to the Modern Taoist Weekend Check-In with Kit Man, a short mini-sode and a reminder that the Tao doesn't operate on set schedules. And now, Kit Man.
Hi there and welcome to the Modern Taoist Weekend Check-In. This is a brand new thing. It's totally new. And it comes from, and we'll explain it more in the next big episode. I'll try to sort through some of this for you in the next episode, but this is kind of coming from a request that multiple people have had about doing more than one episode per week. And the more I thought about it, the more I still can't get away from the fact that 2 big 45 to hour-long episodes a week feels like too much. But I do understand that there are people, in fact, it's many, and maybe even most of you, that want more than just that one Tuesday episode. So I thought, why don't we do a little weekend check-in, a little small episode, a mini-sode, or whatever you want to call it, 10 to 15 minutes long, that kind of gives us a reminder that the Tao isn't just here once a week, right? That the learning can continue through the weekend. Your practice can continue through the weekend. And I want to try to take modern problems and give you a little Taoist lens to them as we head into our mini episode for this week. And one of those problems comes from a decision making, or is about decision making. Because what happens is let's just pretend we're doing it right now, right? So by the end of the week, things have piled up that you didn't really expect to pile up. And I'm not talking about always negative things. It's not always stress, or it's not always obvious problems, but sometimes it's unfinished decisions. A few directions you haven't quite committed to. Maybe it's a conversation that you didn't have that you needed to have, or choices that are sitting out there waiting for you to pick one. And so as you head through the day or into the weekend or into the beginning of next week or whatever, you're carrying these things with you that you don't even really realize are sitting there. And most people handle that in one of 2 ways. They either avoid it completely, or they sit down and try to force clarity by thinking harder about it. And Taoism doesn't push either of those approaches. Taoism wants you to reset to something far simpler. Okay? Let's take one situation, look at it clearly, and I'll give you something you can actually use to get through it before the next week starts. So let's say you're looking at more than one good option. That's what we all want. And most of the time when we have to make a decision, it's not between a good option and a bad option, because the bad option wouldn't even be there if it was all that bad, right? So sometimes there's no obvious wrong choice, which you would think would make things easier, but it usually does the opposite, because you hesitate. You start comparing. You try to map out an outcome. You look for more information and more opinions and more certainty, because that's what we all chase, certainty. Certainty is very rarely there, but we chase that thing down. And the more that we do that, the harder it becomes, because what makes it frustrating is that underneath all of it, there's usually this sense of direction that you know you need to go. One option always feels more natural than the other. It always does, but it doesn't feel certain. So we don't trust it, right? Instead, we keep working it over, trying to think our way into something that feels like a guarantee, like a certainty. And then eventually what happens is the days pass and nothing really changes. And here's where the Tao Te Ching comes in handy. because it actually says stop thinking and end your problems. That line isn't just telling you to avoid thought altogether. It's pointing at what happens when thinking goes too far and starts interfering with something that really is already clear enough. It may not be certain, but it's already pretty clear which way you go. Before you started analyzing everything, there was already a direction, right? It wasn't fully formed, and it didn't come with this certainty of proof, or this proof of certainty, but it was there. And then you started thinking to try to improve it. You added more angles and more scenarios and more attempts to control it, and instead of getting clear, you started picking up all these jagged edges of friction. Back to the Tao Te Ching, it says the Tao never does anything, yet all things are done. And again, that's not about doing nothing. It's about not forcing what doesn't need to be forced. So when you're aligned with something, the next step feels straightforward. It doesn't require constant justification. It doesn't need to be argued. And that's where we've gotten to. We overthink, and it disrupts that. And it turns a single step into a negotiation. And then we get into this loop, this fear of being wrong, a fear of missing out, a fear of closing off all these other options. What if these other options are better than this option? What if And so we get in this loop, right? And the loop feels like we're being productive because we're thinking it through. How many times have you said, well, I just need to think this thing through? You don't fix this by finding better thoughts. You fix it by stepping out of the loop. So go back to the options in front of you and look at them without trying to solve everything. One of them will always move forward. It might not necessarily be the best option on paper, but it's going to be the one that feels less forced. And that's what you're looking for. You have to pause. You have to stop arguing with yourself and look at the options, and one will always come forward. My teacher used to tell me, if you come to two options, flip a coin and say to yourself, option A is heads, option B is tails. And when that coin is in the air for a millisecond, you're hoping one of those lands. Whichever one you hope lands, that's the one you need. Right? The Tao Te Ching says, he who knows does not speak. He who speaks does not know. So in practical terms, if you have to keep talking about it and convincing yourself that something is right, it means you don't trust it. So stop. Stop trying to convince yourself. Choose the option that already sits there and is ready to go. Doesn't need to be the best. It doesn't need to be the one you thought out the most. It needs to be the one that feels the most natural. The one that you would root for if heads or tails was floating in the air and you were waiting for one of those to land. Which one of those? Choose that option. Send the message. Make the call. Start the process. Clarity comes from movement, not from waiting. You're not trying to guarantee the outcome. You're allowing the path to unfold as you engage with it. And that, my friends, is the difference. Which option are you secretly rooting for? That's the one that you need to pick. Going into the weekend, leave the mental back and forth alone. You don't need another round of thinking. You don't need more analysis. You don't need more options. Look at what's already in front of you. Notice where there is a natural lean, and lean that way. Act on it. One step is enough to change direction, and the rest of it will take shape as you move. And that is going to wrap up our little weekend check-in. And I hope you got something from it. And if you can, leave a comment or a question or a review, or please like and subscribe. And don't forget to come back Tuesday morning to the big episode of The Modern Taoist.
Thanks for listening to The Modern Taoist with Kit Man. Please like or subscribe, and if you have questions, leave them in the comments or by visiting daoananda.org or .com.